Well, hi everyone. It's Emily from Putty Like, and I'm joined today by Deanna Joy of Joy Knows How. And we wanted to make this little video blog to talk about all things multi-passionate, all things multi-potentialite. We'll probably use those terms interchangeably. And if you're not familiar with Joy's work, well, you have a lot to look forward to. So yeah, welcome first.
Thank you.
Really excited to chat with you.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here.
Yeah. And then the other reason I wanted to bring you on is because you are going to be a part of Multi-Passionate Must-Haves this September, September 8th through 11th, which is a bundle sale where we bring together a bunch of awesome digital products like courses and ebooks for multi-potentialites, multi-passionates, just stuff that we think would be really helpful. Or I guess I should say because I put it all together. And it's like for sale for a crazy discount for 3 days. So your ebook, Finally Focused, is going to be in that. I'm really excited to talk about that in particular.
Perfect. Yes. So excited.
So I want to ask you first. So like, I had this moment where I was like kind of fed up with trying to fit myself into a box and trying to, or even just like feeling bad about having multiple passions and doing many things and changing directions. And I had this moment many years ago when I was like, enough, like I'm done feeling bad about this. I'm going to find a way to make it work and to like live my best multifaceted life, whatever that looks like. I'm curious, since you're someone in this space too, if you had a moment like that and you know what your journey looked like.
100%. I so resonate because it really does feel like everything stopped and the world became quiet and there was this choice point. For me, it was kind of out of frustration. So from spinning my wheels sort of constantly in my early 20s, and I understand that in your early 20s, you're kind of figuring it out anyway. That's sort of the nature of just that decade. But for me in my early 20s, it was not just like, okay, what do I want to focus on? It was like, how can I possibly narrow things down when I'm genuinely good at all these different things and I have a genuine desire to share those gifts. So not just like I'm interested in exploring them, but there was a pull in me that really wanted to share. And so I started doing what probably a lot of multi-passionate creatives do, which is at first you do try to choose. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to go all in with music. And then I was a lead singer in bands and, playing around LA, and I went all in with that. But then I would come home at night and be like, man, I want to write. I just want to write articles. And I would just write essays like for fun because I needed to write. And then I would be making my handmade greeting cards for everybody's birthday because I needed to also like make things with my hands. And so I realized pretty quickly this idea of choosing one thing was a fallacy for me, and it wasn't even actually an option. But there came a day where I woke up and it was very similar to what you said, Emilie. I was like, enough. This isn't working. Trying to choose one thing isn't working. Let's try the inverse. I'm going to choose myself and I'm just going to bring everything I love. And instead of choosing one thing, my solution was I'm willing to choose one platform. And that's when I started my blog. So that gave me, because I'm a pretty structured person, like structure gives me a lot of freedom. If I kind of know what's happening, I can flow within that. So having a single platform to focus on gave me enough structure that I could start to express a lot of my passions, but channel them all into that platform. I called it at the time just like dumping myself on the internet and creating, a space that could be mine without rules, without confinement, without restriction. I didn't know a space that existed like that. So I wanted to create my own. And that's when I started my blog, which is called Joy Knows How, which is now snowballed into everything I'm doing these days.
I love that. I can so relate. And it's interesting with like websites and blogs, I think they are really well suited for multi-passionates, especially like like even having like a practice blog, like just a place that starts out where you're just as a place where you're sharing your ideas and your passion for different things. And then often it will like evolve into something, but without worrying about what that thing is going into it, and just having a place to explore that can be really powerful for multi-passionates.
Yes. And I had to kind of ignore a lot of advice early on,
Yep.
because even with something like starting a blog, if you look up a course or you look up a tutorial on how to start a blog, the first thing they say is, okay, so first of all, we're going to pick your niche. And I was like, nope, like that was not going to work for me.
100%. Yeah.
So
that's where I was at too.
Yeah, I was like, wait, what? How am I supposed to? It's this expectation that we are to niche down out of the womb. I just think is also like another fallacy. It's just like, it doesn't actually compute or make that much sense in my experience. In my experience, a niche is an organic arrival from a series of trial and error, and you tend to create your own niches. It's not like you choose and then you just go in that direction. You can do that, but be prepared that that may not be what you do forever. Be prepared to pivot, because choosing a niche is tricky especially if you're just starting out, especially with something like a blog where there's all this other like tech stuff and just so much to learn. So I had to ignore a lot of advice.
Yep.
And that started to grow my resilience as a multi-passionate, starting my blog, because I had to filter this advice I was hearing through my multi-passionate expression and know that the reason I chose this was to do it my way and to give myself a space to have creative freedom. So I had to constantly filter, and that started really developing my resilience. And every time I filtered and did it my way and felt good, it got a little bit easier and a little bit easier.
I love this. I feel like we both have this like little rebellious streak where I also got the advice to choose a niche and I was like, not choosing is going to be my niche. Like,
yeah,
kind of thing.
Exactly.
That's awesome. So did you grow up in an environment that nurtured your multi-passionate nature? Like you're talking a lot about confidence and believing in yourself. And I'm curious if that is something that you grew up with or something you had to learn, or how that all went.
For sure. So my mother and father were never married. So when I was conceived, they were dating. I call it like I slipped through the portal, or maybe I created a portal just to get to the earth plane or something, because they dated for a year. I came into the world and then they were like, why was I ever with you at all? And they kind of went their separate ways. But it all worked out in the sense that I still had a lot of access to my father, even though I lived primarily with my mom. So the short answer is yes. And then I'll just give you a little bit more backstory, because I don't talk about my parents enough. And they're both very creative people. So my mom is an elementary school teacher, but that hasn't always been her career. So she's an elementary school teacher now, but there was a point when she was doing interior decorating and trying to get that business off the ground. And I saw her pursuing all these creative ventures, even if it wasn't her main source of income. My mom, for me, is the embodiment of having pleasure passions, or what most would call a hobby. And I really saw her dedicating this time. Also, when I was young, like a little kid, my mom would schedule in it's creativity time. Like it is arts and crafts time, and it's time to make some stuff. And we would paint and we would do all these crafts. And I remember being frustrated because she was so good. And I'd be like, why does it look like that? But she taught me how to create space in life for art. And it was completely normal for me growing up. And even still, she was just texting me. Now she's really into like dot art. So she's been making these mandalas with beautiful, intricate dot art and painting rocks and having friends over to do rock painting parties. And cool. She's a person who has integrated artistic expression into her life and is really unapologetic about that. So I absolutely have that coursing through my blood big time. And then my father is like the OG multi-passionate archetype or something. He is a drummer in his profession. He's also a photographer. He recently got a drone and now does drone video stuff. He's also an avid golfer, and he's also a music producer and a singer. And
So cool.
he's completely unapologetic about all of these things.
I love
So
that.
when I say to him multi-passionate, he's like, yeah, what other ways are to be? Now, I will say that even though both of my parents are these ultra creative people, that didn't stop them from saying, honey, what are you doing with your life? So what are everyone wants this one answer. And it's coming from a good place of like, we would love to know what the rest of your life is going to look like because we're your parents.
So we can relax and
yeah,
everything will be okay.
yeah. So they've been really, really supportive for sure. I mean, ever since I started my blog, they can kind of see the vision. I'm really good at sharing what I do with my family and making sure I don't hide that, and just continuing the conversation and continuing to talk to them about what I'm up to. So they're very supportive now, I think, because they see that I'm sticking with it. Because they saw me start and stop so many things that when I started my blog, they were kind of like, okay, sounds nice, but will you stick with it, was kind of the undertone. But here we are years later. So
yeah, and it's interesting how it's easier as a multi-potentialite to stick with something if that thing is multifaceted itself. That is what I found is like, I mean, that's one of the things I wrote about in my book, where like, if you can find a career that lets you do many things or wear many different hats within that one thing, that group hug of your interests, then it's like much easier to stick with it for the long term, because it stays fun and interesting, and there's always something new to explore and to try and to experiment with.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. And I feel like, even in a corporate setting, there are opportunities to weave in multiple parts of your passions. It's just, but there's a seed of confidence that it sort of needs to be planted somewhere within you, to where you're more available to have these conversations, to where you could say, I actually really love organizing events, and I noticed we don't have any team things. I would love to spearhead that. Or, I used to write articles, or I went to school for journalism. Why don't we do like a team newsletter? I'd love to spearhead that. So there's ways to create. I did this in my last 9-to-5, that I recently exited to go full time in my business, but I was a project manager, and I was like also working on company culture. And I created a newsletter for the team because I wanted to do some graphic design. I was like seething, like, please, I need to do some graphics sometimes. So there's also ways to create that. If that position doesn't exist, because a lot of times it doesn't, there's ways to create it. It just takes having the self-confidence to bring that forward and to put that into the room.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it also probably takes like the right employer. Like, I'm sure some companies are more open than others to that.
Very true. Yeah.
And I think some multi-pods will like seek out an employer like that. And that is another way to go.
That's a good thing to bring up in an interview. Like if you're in an interview and they say, do you have any questions? You say, yeah, I would actually love to know, how do you feel about your teammates bringing various skills to the table? Is that something that you're open to? For example, I have these skills, and while they don't, relate directly to this position, if there's an organic way for me to express them in this role, I would love to do that. So that's a good interview tip.
It sure is. And I think the fear that some people have is like, if I mention like my outside interests or skills, like, will they get scared and then be like, but you're not serious about this one thing? And I feel like, I mean, that might be a litmus test thing to see if this is like the right company for you, or like, it just depends. But I think if they respond well to that question, that's a really good sign.
Totally. Totally.
So let's talk about Finally Focused. So this is your new ebook. Sorry.
Yes. Sure.
I went through it last night and I loved it.
Yay! Oh my gosh.
I was
gosh. Okay.
Oh my gosh, this is like such a great way of thinking about focus, because so focus is a big challenge for those of us with many projects on our plate who are, we got the shiny object syndrome. There's all these things we want to explore. Focus is a big deal. And I find I like naturally do some of the things you mentioned in your ebook, but like this way of thinking about the 3 different types of focus, I'm like, oh, okay, I can do that so much more intentionally and like get so much more out of it. So would you mind going over your 3 types of focus?
Yes, let's talk about the 3-part focus framework. First of all, thank you for reading the ebook. I am gonna try to just keep it cool, but I'm freaking out on the inside. Yeah, so finally focus was really born out of self-observation. And whenever I come up against something that feels really tedious and feels very dense, typically it's because I'm thinking of it as a really vague concept. And if I can start to break it into parts or see where maybe the binary isn't actually present, then there becomes an opening and just another opportunity to look at it in a fresh way. And as a multi-potentialite, anyone watching this is your gift. You constantly see things in new ways. So this is what happened with me in focus. It was like, okay, focus is hard, but what is focus? And is there really just one type of focus? That doesn't make sense to me anymore. After I started digging. There's never
just one.
Yeah, exactly. After I started digging, I was like, no, I'm throwing that out. So the 3-part focus framework came about through observation. I'm going to give a little bit of context and then I'll go into each type of focus. So I noticed that I would have trouble completing a task if I was in the back of my mind questioning whether or not it was the task I actually needed to be doing at that time. So if I was working on something and I just couldn't get it done, it was like this weird procrastination or this tension. Usually it would be because in the back of my mind, I'd be like, wait, should I do this thing before this? Or like, does this really have to happen right now? Am I wasting time? And all of those thoughts happening while I'm trying to complete a task would create dissonance and I wouldn't be able to focus. So let's talk about the first type of focus that is a part of my 3-part focus framework. It's called intensive focus. And intensive focus is this overview, this zooming out. I like to think of it as like a conference of one, right? It's you and you. This is intentional time that you block off on your calendar to focus, but not necessarily focus on completing tasks, but instead to focus on things like, do your current priorities line up with your current commitments? And to really sit with that and give yourself an opportunity to ask yourself that question. Because as multi-passionates, our priorities tend to shift. I call it like tectonic plates. Like it's not always huge, but this constant shifting can create a lot of confusion. So intensive focus is this beautiful sacred time that you carve out for yourself where you get a high level overview and you get to look at everything you're currently working on, all the commitments that you also have, and you get to see, okay, are these organically overlapping? Are they clashing? Are there conversations I need to have? Are there commitments that I made that I no longer want to do? Because as a multi-passionate, I mean, this is why we have that shame of being flaky, because we tend to change our minds because we have a lot of different avenues that we want to explore. So intensive focus gives you the opportunity to have these very real conversations with yourself and to really come into a space of feeling grounded and aligned with what you're currently working on. I also love to say, as a bonus tip, when you're in what I call an intensive focus session, like a conference of one, always also ask yourself, are there any celebrations that have gone unnoticed? Because when we're bouncing from project to project, or we're navigating multiple things at once, we tend to be going almost at a hyper speed. Also, we just learn things so quickly and we're so willing to try new things that we're very stimulated a lot of the time. And we don't always take that time to pause and reflect on what we've already accomplished. So when you're in your intensive focus energy, that's also a really great time to just honor yourself and celebrate yourself for the task you've already completed. And that's going to move you into a really beautiful kind of more momentum based type of focus, which I call active focus.
Okay, before we get to active focus, can we
Yes.
just talk about the snacks?
Okay, snacks. Okay.
Like so
Okay.
this image of like going to a park with your journal and like bringing snacks like really got me excited.
Okay. So as I mentioned, intensive focus is kind of like a conference of one. So let's say you are stepping into a conference. What would you need in order to feel like you have everything you need and you're just going to be able to really unpack your bags and enjoy the experience? For me, I need snacks. That's number one. I need to know where can I get snacks, what time is lunch, like all these things with the food. I'm gonna make sure that I've used the bathroom. I'm gonna have some water. So you really want to think about setting up your space for intensive focus, because this is a longer stretch of time, right? I'm at the point now where I can have an intensive focus session for about an hour, and that feels really good and nourishing. But if you're new to this practice, really start with like 3 hours. Give yourself an afternoon or a morning or an evening where no one needs anything from you, and you can go and take yourself to this conference. So I want you to bring your snacks. I want you to have some water or your favorite beverage, a nice clean whiteboard or a blank notebook, colorful pens. Give yourself space to breathe and to dream and to really zoom out and focus in this big way. And for me, like, I'm just a person who, if I'm not either full or like know where my next meal is going to be, I can't really focus. So snacks for
Nice.
sure.
Thank you. I just like I zoned in on the snacks as like maybe it's like my Taurus moon talking, but just like anyway.
Yeah. And doing it at the park, as you mentioned, I will often have my intensive focus in an outdoor setting. So like you said, you have nice high ceilings, right? We were chatting before this. If you had lived in a space where you have nice high ceilings, you might not require to go outside. I kind of live in an apartment setting where the ceiling is kind of low. And when you become curious about focus and you don't just look at it as like, can I sit down and finish a task? You really start to open up on what's contributing to your ability to focus and to think clearly. For me, if I want to think expansively and I want to zoom out, I want to be underneath a clear blue sky or a space or a beautiful library with high ceilings. It helps me to zoom out. If I'm focused in and I want to be focused in like an active focus, which we'll talk about in a moment, I can do that at a coffee shop. I can do that in a somewhat quiet coffee shop.
Yeah.
I can do that in my office. I can do that at home because I'm going more in, like focusing zoomed in. So that's another thing to consider as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, because you're kind of, I mean, like zooming out and thinking big picture and like thinking about the future and all those things seem like they fit really nicely for like a big outdoor open space.
Yeah, if weather permits and you can, So yeah, and then I also have an intensive focus playlist. So I don't know if there'll be any links shared, but I can definitely send you that link. So I have a playlist and I add to it all the time. So it'll only get longer and longer as time goes on, because having some nice tunes is also really helpful. Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about active focus. Now, we probably won't have to spend as much time on this one because this is the focus that most of us are really familiar with. Active focus is what I like to call messy bun, get it done energy. Or if you've seen Lemony Snicket, it's when the girl gets her scrunchie and she pulls her hair back and you know she's about to invent something dope and she's about to just go in. That's the energy of active focus. It's like, okay, and here's the thing, you've gained so much clarity and intensive focus that voice in the back of your head that's like, is this actually what I should be working on? Oh, but I also have this idea. I have this, I have that. That voice is settled. It's calmed. You already spent time with all those ideas. You've already satiated those curiosities. And now you get to step into your active focus session with crystal clear clarity. And it's time to put in work. It's time to get it done. I call active focus the momentum builder, right? So active focus is writing the blog post, sending the emails, managing your team, even just depending on where you are in your life and in your business. All of those things, that's active focus. It's where you are on. when you're teaching the workshop or you're recording the podcast. That's active focus, not necessarily planning to do it, but the actual doing of it. That's active focus energy. And so it requires a very different energy. And my posture always changes. When I talk about active focus, I get like a little bit more intense because that's kind of the energy of it, right? Whereas intensive focus, I'm like, and then you just have your snacks and it's beautiful. So active focus is somewhat more, active, for lack of a better word. Yeah. So how do you prepare yourself for that? Kind of similar. Be fully fed, right? Don't go into an active focus session like, oh, I'll just eat after. No, because you're going to get hungry and then you're going to be distracted. So make sure you've had a nice meal. It doesn't have to be anything wild, like whatever you would normally eat, but eat something so you're not super hungry. Have your favorite beverage. And then I love to use the Pomodoro method, which you might also know as like tomato timer, where you're doing 20 to 25 minutes on and then 5 to 10 minute breaks. And when I say break, I don't mean minimize a tab and maximize a tab. I mean, get up, stand up, refill your water, do what I do. I always go and I just pet my dog. I'm like, you're so cute, buddy. How is this possible? Look out the window, give your eyes a break from the screen, take an actual break, use the bathroom, all those things. The reason that the Pomodoro method is so impactful for active focus is because if you do have that inkling to take a break or you feel like you're tuttering out, you'll be able to see the timer and you can just say, okay, well, I do have a break in 3 minutes. I could probably just finish this. So that's really helpful. I do like to listen to music as well in active focus, but kind of like more up-tempo music or silence. And then your environment is really going to just depend on what your vibe is, right? Some of us thrive when we're working in a bustling coffee shop and it actually feels somewhat soothing and then we can really focus. Some of us thrive when we have no distractions at all. So whatever that looks like for you, it's also a no cell phone zone. Active focus. And it's funny because sometimes on Instagram, I'll be like, it's Tuesday, active focus day. That's another tip. Tuesdays are a great day for active focus. Mondays are beautiful for intensive focus. It has to do with the planetary rhythm of the days. Mars. So if you try to put active focus on a Monday, Mondays are ruled by the moon, and it's truly asking us to zoom out, think big picture. Like that's just what it already wants from us. So you're going to have a little bit more friction. And I like to use all the leverage I can. So I'm really into astrology, human design, all the leverage. I'm like, give it to me.
I'm really trying not to, I'm really holding myself back from like just talking about astrology now. We can talk about it after. It's a huge passion of mine, but we'll just.
My gosh. Okay. Yes, we'll geek out on it after. Okay, cool. Yeah. So like you said, Mars. So Tuesdays are great for active focus. And it's funny because sometimes I'll show behind the scenes on my Instagram. I'll be like, it's Tuesday, it's an active focus day. And I'll start showing like little clips of what I'm doing. And then I'm literally like, okay, bye. I got to go in airplane mode. Like I can't actually do this with my phone. So active focus is a no phone zone. And here's the most important thing about active focus. Reward yourself when you're done. And plan your reward before you even start. So when I'm looking at my active focus day and what I need to get done, as I'm looking at the tasks that I'm so excited to complete with that beautiful energy of just Tuesday and that momentum behind me, and I've got all this clarity because I had my intensive focus session already, I'm also thinking about how am I going to celebrate myself for this? Sometimes that means I'm going to take a bath in the middle of the day. Sometimes that means I'm going to go ahead and purchase that thing that's in my cart. Sometimes that means I'm going to call a friend and go for a walk without my dog, who stops every 2 seconds. Sometimes it means I'm going to take my dog on an extra long walk. It can mean whatever it looks like. So this is not about capitalism and buying stuff. If that's how you like to celebrate, so be it. But think about what would feel really nourishing for you and plan that in to your active focus day.
I love that.
Now, yeah.
That's like a great reminder to me, both the like actually take a break between your Pomodoros and celebrate afterwards, because I've been known to just like click the next button on my Pomodoro app, which is the break.
Yeah, it is important. And it's sort of like, I mean, well, maybe we could talk about this for just a second, because with the Pomodoro method, I do find that sometimes if I'm in a flow, I'm like, I genuinely don't want to take my break right now, but I at least give myself the option. So I think sometimes it's important to know also your process. Like if you're writing and it's really flowing and your timer goes off and you feel like that's going to disrupt your flow, maybe it's just like a permission moment. Like, okay, I have permission to take a break right now, but I don't feel like I need it. You know, something like that. Because I've been there too, where I'm like, actually, I don't want to take a break. I'm really into it. But maybe like put a cap on it, like 3 Pomodoros in a row max or something.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're supposed to, after 3 Pomodoros, take a longer break. So.
Oh, okay. I actually haven't done it that way. That makes a lot of sense though. Yeah.
Cool.
So, okay. So as we're talking about taking breaks, this is a perfect segue into the last part of the 3-part focus framework, which is passive focus. So passive focus, I call the burnout preventer. And passive focus essentially is taking a break, but it's just making sure that we're taking a break that's going to support our energetic output, and that we're taking breaks and doing things that can help put us in a state of creative flow, or that can truly help us relax. So the thing about passive focus that I really love is that it is a type of focus. And I think that sometimes when we are creating or we're working, we think of taking a break as not being productive, or we think of the word passive as being like really in the backseat and not doing anything. And that can be what you're doing passive focus. You could absolutely not do anything. But the reframe that I would love for you to make is that that is still a type of focus. It's the type of focus that can support you with looking forward to your next active focus session instead of dreading it because you're so tired. It's the type of focus where you might get a brand new idea and run to your idea notebook and jot it down real quick. And that's still beautiful. And that's all a part of your work. And that's all a part of your process as a multi-passionate. So passive focus can look like a lot of different things. I also like to think of it as like the song of your project that just gets stuck in your head, that's kind of always going. So, you know, if maybe you step into a retail store and you hear a song playing and you know all the lyrics, and you're like, I swear I've never heard this song. I don't know how I know all these lyrics, but there's been something kind of in the background. You heard it in a commercial, or, you know, you actually have heard the song. So you can also utilize passive focus in that way. And what I mean by that is, for example, when I was first starting my membership, when I wasn't working on the membership, if I was just driving or I wanted to take a break from the actual active focus part, I would drop into a podcast about how to build a thriving membership. And I would listen, and I would allow that to be a part of my workflow. I wouldn't feel guilty that I was taking a break, because it was like getting the song of my dreams to just integrate into my head. That's the best way I could put it. It could be maybe watching a replay of a webinar. You can relax. You don't have to actively be implementing every step as you're watching it. You can relax and you can take that in, and that's a part of your work. So what I like to do is, if I'm having an active focus day, I actually have my VA schedule my calendar like this. She's amazing. She's fully on board, and we've taken it to a whole new level. So maybe there gets to be like an addition to the ebook at some point. But if I have an active focus chunk on my calendar, I'll have my VA just put passive focus blocks on top. And the reason that that's helpful for me is because, like we were just saying, Emilie, sometimes when we take a break, we're just minimizing a screen and then maximizing another one and calling it a break. So if you can say, okay, I'm going to do some active focus on Tuesday, and let me just think of a couple passive focus activities that I can do when I'm taking a break. That could be, I'm going to color. That could be, I'm going to play my ukuleles. This is a great time to pull on some of your other passions. Perfect time. Give them some air time. They miss you, right? I'm going to water my plants. I'm going to listen to a podcast episode, right? So you can sort of choose what's nourishing for you and start to weave that into your day. So you want to have kind of like a balance of active and passive focus to really protect your energetic output. It's just about not burning out, which is really, really important to me, because if you've ever survive burnout, you then are like on a mission to help people prevent it. So,
Yeah.
so that's really important too.
Cool. And you've got a great worksheet in your, or as part of your ebook that has where people can like slot in the different types of focus they're going to do throughout the day. And
Yeah.
that's
So
pretty
you can
cool.
play with it a little bit. And, the best thing about the 3-part focus framework is that I'm offering you tools
Mhm.
and you get to choose how you use them. So you could say, I just want to start every day with an hour of intensive focus because you could say maybe aligning with my priorities and reviewing my commitments and dropping back into my why I'm doing all of this, why this is so important to me, that I can feel is going to set me up for success. And for a week, you could try just starting every day with an hour of intensive focus and then dropping into active focus and then having passive focus to end your day. You
That's so
could
cool.
do the opposite. You could be like, okay, I want to crunch out some tasks. So I'm going to start with active focus, but then I'm going to use my intensive focus to review what I just did and make sure that it's aligning with everything. And then after my intensive focus, I'm going to drop into some passive focus for the rest of the day. So you have options, right? I'm not saying this is how you do it because I know better than to talk to multi-passionates like that. Why
Yeah,
would
you
I
can't do
even
that.
try? Yeah. So it's a set of tools that you get to use. I'm at the place now where I like to have an intensive focus session once a week at the top of my week. There was a time where my projects were a little bit more streamlined and I could get away with maybe twice a month and I would still feel really clear. So you get to take this new framework and make it your own, which is really my greatest wish, is to take it and run with it.
Awesome. So what else do you have going on? Like, business stuff, non-business stuff, like what's like in your
Yeah.
current orbit?
Okay, so my current orbit right now, I'm currently in enrollment for my premier group coaching experience, which is really, really exciting. On the back end of that, I'm closing out my membership. So I had a membership for multi-passionates and I loved it. But as I was in an intensive focus session, I started asking myself some very real questions. And it led me to make the decision to actually close out my membership and reframe my business model. So now I have a group coaching program that I'm launching. And then I also have the Finally Focused ebook, but I'm refining the funnel. So with the digital product, you make the product, but that's just the beginning of it.
Totally.
There's also so much refining of the funnel. So I'm creating a focus quiz. What kind of focus do you need more of as a multi-passionate? And then creating a really organic funnel to the ebook. And I'm also planning to take what's in the ebook and turn it into a more interactive experience that will be called Finally Focused Live.
Cool.
And I'm playing with a few different formats, but I think it's just going to be like a 5-day immersive course experience where we just meet on Zoom for one full Monday through Friday, once a quarter, and we just review everything and you get the experience of what's in the ebook, but more like this, where I can talk and animate and you get to see my body language and all those things.
That sounds super fun.
Yeah. And then I have an idea for a membership for Finally Focus called the Finally Focus Club. If it's like, hey, if you want to just come and, have a Q&A once a month. I don't know if I'm going to do it yet. I'm lovingly allowing it to be an ideation phase. How much time do you have? I have a lot of projects. I'm gonna keep going.
Well, what about some non
life
works?
stuff?
Yeah, some other things. I know you've got
some other things.
music.
Okay. So one thing I really want to do is I want to get my dog into agility training. He's super smart.
Cool.
And he has a lot of energy, but he's also kind of high anxiety. He's a rescue dog. So I really want to get him into agility training because I feel like that will exercise his mind. It'll be super bonding for us. And I think it'll also just relieve some of his anxiety because he's getting all that mental exercise. So yeah, potentially there's like
nice.
The Joy and Chai show at some point where I get to just like really like just have this experience with him.
I love that. I wanted to do that for a while and it just hasn't worked out, but that sounds amazing.
Yeah, I hope that I can find like the perfect facility or something that does that. I don't really know where to start, but I figure it's a Google search away. We could figure it out. The other thing that I've been thinking about really personally is like moving. I like my apartment. I love the location, but when you work from home, you realize that you have different needs. So definitely just moving into another space that has a little bit more living space, and getting back into some fitness. It's been a very sedentary past couple of years. So sort of working on shifting into the identity of an active person, and then trusting that, everything will kind of follow after that.
Cool. Awesome. So where can people find you and learn more about your awesome work and connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me over on Instagram. It's at Joy Knows How. Joy is spelled with an I, and there's a period in between each word. The reason I have to add these things in between is because if I don't, it can look like Joy No Show, and that's not the vibe that we're going for. So it's joi.knows.how. And my website is the same, except there are hyphens instead of the periods. So you can also always catch up with me over on my website. I do take very intentional breaks from Instagram. So if you ever pop on my Instagram and you see like a be right back post, just know that there's going to be a link in my bio where you can sign up for my email list. I'm really consistent with email because I just love to write and communicate in that way. And another exciting thing that I just started the process of today, I hired someone to help me, is there will be a podcast coming out around my birthday. So depending on when you see this, you might be able to search for the
when's your birthday?
multi-passionate. December 9th.
December 9th. Cool. So
Yeah.
Sagittarius,
Sun, Moon, and Pisces rising.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Very nice. I'm an
Yeah.
Aries, Sun, Taurus, Moon, Virgo rising.
Oh, that's a nice mix.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Cool. Yeah. So
Awesome.
those are that's where we can stay in touch.
Great. Thank you. And I'll put a bunch of links in this post also. So you
Cool.
can probably just scroll down and click a link.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, I am so excited to include Finally Focused in Multi-Passionate Must-Haves this year. Probably we'll be publishing this sometime in August, and MPMH happens September 8th through 11th. A bunch of courses and ebooks and just things that I picked out because I thought they would be perfect for multi-potentialites at like a crazy discount for 3 days. You don't want to miss it. So yeah, mark your calendar, September 8th.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
yeah, thank you so much for chatting with me and for, speaking to the Putty Like community and just for doing everything that you're doing. It's so great to have another voice out there who shares this mission. And I mean, I feel like we're all in this together, both to like help individual multi-passionates be who they are and live, design lives that like fit with how they're wired and build lives around their many passions, but also just more broadly to get these ideas out there and to normalize the idea of doing many things that like there's nothing wrong with it and it's actually a strength. And so it's always nice to meet someone else who's doing this too.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. We're in this together. And I say, one of the things I say often is, on the surface, sure, we're talking about celebrating your passions, right? But underneath that is this radical self-acceptance and accepting who you are and not trying to fit in a box. Like, you built the box and you built the platform the box is on, and you're like embellishing the box and you weren't meant to be in the box. So it's really that deeper self-acceptance, and from that anything is possible. So thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you.